In video games, you likely have different stages, such as the main menu, playing the game, or the loading screen, or even a level editor or something. In this video, we're going to create an engine class that will sort of maintain our game loop and maintain what stage that we're at. In doing so, we're also going to simplify our main.py file, and we're going to add a stage just to test it. In the next video, we're actually going to add our main menu. All of the source code is available in the description. If for some reason you get stuck, or if you just want to sort of teleport to the end, feel free to take a look at the source code. Let's get started. The code for the previous step is in the description below if you want to follow along. Let's go into core and let's create an engine.py file. The file itself is going to be responsible for initializing PyGame. And also, we're going to have a couple defaults for the screen size, and then we're going to have sort of a global reference to our engine. In coding the engine class, we're going to start off with a constructor, and we're just going to set this global variable to self. Our engine is now going to be responsible for keeping track of the things in the game. Anything that is updated, that has like an update method, will be just put into active objects. And then these are three different kinds of things that can be drawn. Background drawables get drawn behind everything, so it gets drawn first. And then drawables are things like your sprites, like the player, trees, rocks, etc. They'll be drawn next. And then any of the user interface elements, such as labels, like the text that we did in the last video, will be drawn over everything. Our engine is now going to have a lot of the logic that we had in our main.py file. We're going to keep track of the clear color. When you first start drawing a frame, the whole screen becomes this color, and then you start drawing everything over it, like your tiles and whichever. So you can now set it just by calling engine.clearColor, and you can change this to whatever you want. The engine will also keep track of the screen as well. And then it's also going to keep track of all the stages that you can switch to. Stages, like I kind of mentioned earlier, are the main menu or gameplay or level editor, etc., etc. And then the current stage that you're on will be kept track of as well. When you first create the engine, we won't have a current stage. You'll have to switch to some stage when you start. Next, I stubbed out some of the functions that we have. So this is going to register a stage. At the very beginning, we'll basically say all of the stages that we have in the game. And then this function can be called at any time to actually switch to a stage. So all you got to do is call engine.switchToMenu or engine.switchToEditor. And bam, now you're in the level editor or whatever. The run function is going to have our game loop that we had in our main.py file. We're going to put that in there. And then the reset function is going to clear all of these, the active objects, all of the different kinds of drawables, etc. Coding a register function, add the following to this, the name of the stage, and then the function that gets called. And then go ahead, we're going to basically just keep track of it in our stages. We're going to list all of the stages by their name. And then the stage is actually going to be a function. So we're just going to call a function that just sets up the main menu. We're going to call a function that sets up the gameplay. The switch to function calls our reset, cleans up everything from the previous stage. Now say, hey, we're at this current stage. We get the function to set it up just by calling self.stages, whatever the name is. We call just like a debug print statement that'll just, on our console, it'll sort of tell us what stage it's switching to. This will be useful later on in case you're like coding the level editor and you get an error or something. And then we'll call the function to set up the stage. Our run function is going to look a lot like the game loop that we did in main.py. There's going to be some differences. We're going to do self.running. Again, the code is in the description below. It's going to be quite the same as we did with just some modifications to now have the engine store it instead. But yeah, anyway, so we're going to do the same kind of game loop. We're going to get all of the events. Next, we're going to call our update code. So this will update all of the objects in our game by calling that, are active. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to draw all of the different, like 3 different kinds of drawables. So everything in the background, like the tiles, our drawables, which are like sprites or, trees, etc. And then all of the UI stuff, such as labels, will be drawn just right on top of that. Right before we do that, we fill the entire screen with the clear color. So we just start out with blue or whatever your clear color is, and then we draw everything on top of that. Finally, we're going to send the data to the monitor, essentially. It doesn't exactly do that, but you could kind of think of it doing that, like, hey, we're done with the frame, it's ready to be drawn. And then we're gonna delay for 17 milliseconds. 1 second is 1,000 milliseconds. And if you divide that by 60, you get 17. So if you want your game to update at 60 frames per second, we should delay by 17. This assumes that the game runs really fast. There's probably some better code that we can write for, like, if the game runs really slow, but I think this suffices for now. Finally, we're going to call PyGame.quit. This is not inside of the while loop, and you actually don't need to call this function. PyGame will actually clean itself up regardless at the end of the application, whether or not you call this. Either which way, I want you to kind of know that this exists. Very last thing that we're going to do is we're going to clear everything. So all the objects that we're updating and then all the different kinds of drawables. One other thing is we're going to clear the physics just because it's so unique. But anyway, we'll tell the engine to clear all the like bodies and triggers and such as well. And this can be called anytime that you switch to like a different area, or if you're going from the gameplay and you're switching to the main menu, whatever, we can call this. So this requires us to make a couple modifications to other files to sort of adapt to having an engine. So let's come into first our map.py file, and actually that's in core. So core map.py. When we create a map, we're going to just add this map to the background drawables. And that'll basically mean that the engine will now call our draw function. Our area file is no longer going to have to reset everything. You can actually completely get rid of this method because the engine will now be responsible for all of this. So we'll come in here and we'll delete this. Next, we're going to come in here and instead of reset everything, we're now going to call this code. So we're just going to tell the engine to reset and we're good to go. Go into your sprite class and we're going to, up at the top, import our engine. Next, we're going to replace this function and we're going to say engine.drawables.append. So we're going to add this to the engine's drawables instead. We're going to do the same thing with the delete function here. We're just going to come in here and do engine.drawables.remove. Also, go ahead and get rid of these sprites. We no longer need that. And we also no longer need the reset sprites function. Jump into your labels class. We're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to get rid of labels. We'll come in here to the constructor and we're going to import the engine. And then we're also going to do, we're going to add it to the UI drawables. So this will be drawn sort of over everything. Go into your entity file. The only thing that needs to change is getting rid of this line right here, the active objects. Jump into player.py. We're going to get rid of where we're importing the active objects. Find where you're adding it to active objects.append, and you can just instead do the following code. So we're going to import our engine, and we're just going to add to the active objects. This will make it so that the engine now calls our update function. Next thing we're going to do is actually create the stages. So if you go to your source folder, let's create a new folder called stages. And in here, we're going to create a menu.py as well as a play.py file. Inside of menu.py, we're going to come in here and create a function for the menu. And we're actually just going to put pass. We're just going to make it empty. We'll fill this out in the next video when we do the main menu. Next, we're going to go to the play.py file and we're going to bring the following in. Play.py file is simply going to load the area. That's actually all it needs to do. Any of the code that you want to do when you're setting up your gameplay can now just be put here. With that being said, we have everything in place to now change our main.py file. So go ahead and jump into main.py, and we actually don't need any of this code anymore. Our engine class is now responsible for doing all of this. There's a couple things you could do if you wanted to comment out all the code by holding down Control and doing the question mark. If you want to copy this code or save it somehow, absolutely. But our code is now going to look a little bit different. Now our code is actually going to look like this. We're not even importing PyGame anymore. It's so much cleaner. All we're doing is importing our engine class. We're setting up a new game engine. We're passing in the name of the game, which is adventure game or whatever you want. We're registering 2 different stages of the game. The first one's going to be like the main menu and then the actual gameplay itself. And what's cool about this is it's just as simple as just saying switch to play or switch to editor or switch to menu. Whatever stage that you have registered, you can then just switch to by just putting play here. At the end, when you're ready to run the game, you just do e.run and you're good to go. It'll actually run the game. This is referred to as the builder pattern, where you create sort of a builder object, so to speak, and then you set it up in different stages. You call different functions to sort of build pieces of it, and then finally you run it. And it just makes our code so much cleaner. And you can now use that engine.py file in other games too as well. You can, easily make, a completely different game pretty quickly, by using this. Now, if we come in here and test it, go ahead and hit the run button up at the top. And there we go. We're just going to test it to make sure that the game still runs. Another test that you can do is go to a different area and just make sure that there's no glitches or anything like that with that. And then go again to here. In testing this, I had all sorts of weird things happen, like the volcano map would be on top of this start map here or whichever. But anyway, so the last thing that we're going to do for this video is we're actually going to test switching the stage. So by hitting the escape button, we're going to go to the menu stage. Now, in our player.py file, we're going to go to the update function. And right in the middle of the input code, we're just going to check if the escape key was pressed. And if it is, check this out. We'll just import the engine and just call engine.switchToMenu. That's it. That will come in there and just switch to the main menu. Let's go ahead and test it. So go to main.py and run it. And there we go. So we have the player. If you hit the escape button, everything should disappear. And for me, it does. If you look at your terminal here, you even get switching to menu down at the bottom. So it's switched to the play stage and you're able to play, and then it's switching to the menu. I know that it didn't look like we did a lot with the game itself in this video, but we greatly refactored it. And a lot of the development that you're gonna do will kind of be refactoring, right? Trying to clean up the code that you've already done so that you can add newer features later on. I highly recommend this practice. The more that you refactor, the easier it is to sort of add new features later on. And refactoring is a whole skill in itself. But if you made it this far, really good job. Thank you so much for watching. Again, no worries if you hit any issues or errors. The source code is in the description below. For the next video, we're going to actually code the main menu. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.